Well, here we are again, folks. This is Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. I can only teach what I've learned. What I am teaching and talking about on these excerpts mainly is what I have learned through life, but lately what I have learned through school. In schooling, in a small college, by the way, it's TitusBaptistSeminary.org. You can find it out of LaGrange, Georgia, Titus Baptist Seminary. And it is a very small seminary, and it's on the YouTube. And it's basically free compared to anything else that you'll go to. There's a recommended group of books that the director uses, Brother Dennis Farr. And these books are all good books. And these are books that can be reused and related to, and you can relate to them without being under a mandate of not being able to preach or teach out of those books that you've learned out of. Now, what's the point in learning if you're not going to pass it on? If you learn something, you need to pass it on. Otherwise, there's no point in learning it in the first place. If you've learned it just so you can be smart, then you're stupid. A very, very smart person can be very stupid if he thinks he's the one that contains this knowledge and he's got a puffed up head. Somebody can take a pin and prick his head and it'll blow up because there's always somebody smarter than him around. I mean, you better be careful how you engage in a conversation with somebody if you think you're going to use your own intelligence. You need to use what God has given you, and that's all you need to use is what God has given you. And He's given you enough intelligence to not blow things out of proportion and think you're smarter than you are. So be very careful how you do that. So I'm about one of the very poorest readers in the world because I'm a dyslexic speller. And so therefore I had to be careful how I cipher words, because words to me sometimes I cipher wrong because of that. But we're going to look into Genesis chapter 9 and 7 verses. We're going to look at 7 verses, 20 through 27 of chapter 9. And this is talking about after the flood. A man named Noah that built the ark. He did what God commanded him to do without failure. And the failure of Noah was after they settled, after he had grown a vineyard, which would be probably 3 to 5 years at least. And he had grown a vineyard and he had made some wine. And the Bible said wine is a mocker and strong drink is raging. And we see that wine mocked Noah by having an act happen to him physically by one of his sons that caused a great degradation upon this earth, and it's been here ever since. But concerning Ham and Canaan, these are Ham is one of the boys of Noah. And the seed of Shem and the seed of Japheth were general servitude people. Now, we see, because I'm in America, and I don't know how other countries work, they have a system of higher learning or whatever, but we see that there are, from generation to generation, there are people who are servants, and they're servants of servants. And we see the servant of servants. We see Joshua, David, Solomon subdued them. Now, Joshua and David and Solomon, they were ones that used servants, yet they used them properly. But we see Alexander the Great, when he came along, he subdued them into being armed forces and being fighters and being whatever. And then the Romans subdued people into being battle people. being a person of the sword, of iron, and fighters and whatever. So then we see technological prophecy, where the technology came in, and Christian anthropologist Arthur C. Constantine states that all of the earliest civilizations of note were founded and carried to the highest technical prophecy by the Hamitic people. These were the people that came from Ham, the Hamitic people. They came from the man Ham, which was the one of Noah's sons. Now let's look at Japheth. Japheth, it said, God shall enlarge Japheth and shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Now, that is a very, very important statement. Where did God dwell? He dwelt in the Ark of the Covenant with the children of Israel. But he said that he was going to dwell in the tents of Shem. And concerning Shem, it said, blessed be the Lord God of Shem. Here is obviously a reference to the special favor bestowed upon Shem's descendants, beginning with Abraham. Now, this is very, very important for the Christendom people, because Abraham was the first man of faith, and it began with Abraham and ended in the manger in Bethlehem with Jesus coming. See, Abraham was the one that showed the picture of Jesus coming, the Lamb of God, that would be sacrificed for the sins of mankind. Well, let's get back over concerning Japheth for a minute. Since 539 BC, before Christ, was a defeat of the Babylonians by Cyrus the Great. No Semitic or Hamitic race has succeeded in breaking the world supremacy of the Japhethic race. Now, this Japhethic race, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. That was the glorious prophecy of God in Shem. But the Japhethic race is the peoples who are rulers, are a group of people who always are head up people. Okay, we have the threefold contribution of those three sons. Now, they started out with three systems. These three systems are still here. Ham was a technical type of guy, and his prophecy is a responsibility for man's physical well-being. Man's physical well-being comes from that group. Now, Japheth's application in prophecy is different. It is his application in prophecy is development of the scientific method. That's studying out things scientifically. Responsibility for man's well-being. Scientifically is how man's well-being is today. I myself am under 3 little medications at 76. That's not too bad in the sense of the word of where we live today in America. How we've eaten wrong, how we've treated our bodies wrong, all the things that we've done wrongly for health. And so I'm glad that God has given me relatively well-being. Now, my wife has terminal cancer of the brain. That doesn't mean that she has sinned in some bad way or done anything. It just means in the day and age that we are, in the chemical world we live in and everything, that something has got in her system that got to her brain and caused her to have brain cancer. And so that's where we are today. Yet we know, and she knows, that she's in here right now, that she is going to heaven, and she's resided to that. and knows that she's going to be with God the rest of her eternity. Wow. To know that is the biggest relief that a person can possibly have. It's the only relief a person can have, by the way, is that. Now Shem, he had religious insight, and he's responsible for man's spiritual well-being. So we have these three guys that came in, quote, quote, and now we are the descendants. And as we are the descendants of those three people, things still go the way they went. And so, with most responsible account, let's look at that. Most responsible account of this whole deal. And of the early history of mankind. In the history which, rightly understood, does not require us all to believe that the modern man began with an ape. Woo-wee. Long reaches. It would take a long reach of instability to go to that place of thinking that man came from an ape, and that we had a long, long evolutionary history and a fresh start as a single family who would carry with them in an unpopulated earth accumulated heritage of the pre-flood world. The summary then, what we have endeavored to show is the proper may be set forth briefly as follows. Geographically, let's look at it geographically. Geographically, distribution of the fossils that are all over the earth here, everywhere, remains as such that they are most logically explained by treating them as marginal representatives of the widespread and in part forced dispensation of people from a single multiplying population established at a point more or less central to them all. Wow. Which sent forth successive wise merchants, waves of merchants, not wives, waves of merchants, each wave driving the perverse one further toward the preparatory where we are now. And each one has drove forth for that, for us. And that's where we are today. Now listen to this. Number 3, the extraordinary physical variability remains the stems from the fact that they were members of a small, isolated, strong interband where the culture, the similarities linked together, each the most widely dispersed of them indicate a common origin of all of them. Now remember, we just said that we all came from Noah, and we all came from Ham, Shem, and Japheth. You say, well, we all came from Adam. Well, Noah came from Adam, and then Noah was the first guy on the earth after the flood. And so he was the father of these children that we see the descendants came from, and we are the descendants from that. Now, we're going to look at the 4th thing. What is true of fossil man is equally true of vanishing and of the living primitive societies. Now, I got news for you. There is going to come a day when just like recently, we've had some storms come that totally destroyed some countries. It didn't wipe all the people off, but it could have. Had it wiped them all but one husband and wife, there would have been a new start in that country. And that's how it all works. All these dispersed populations are of one basic stock, the Hamic family of Genesis chapter 10. That's Ham, and Ham is the one that brought us to the place where we are today. Now they were the subsequently displaced and overwhelming by the Indo-European, which would be the Japhethic group. Now remember, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Now the Japhethic group were part of the European, Indonesian and European people, who nevertheless inherited or adopt and extensively built up upon the technology so that they gained the upper hand. Each geographic area where they were spread. They were put in geographic areas, and then they spread out. And as they spread out, they became the knowledgeable people of industry and many other things. Now finally, this thesis is strengthened by the evidence of history, which shows the migration has always tended to follow the pattern, has frequently been accompanied by incidences of degeneration. Always degeneration, always going downhill, always doing it backwards, always going the wrong way. And this is where we are in degeneration. The general pattern of culture relationship, which are paralleled to those that archaeology has seen, revolved from antiquity. And in Genesis and early man, we've seen degeneration. When you leave God out, there's nothing but downhill, nothing but degeneration. When you leave God out, I don't care who you are, professor or astronomer, or I don't care who you are. This thing on television right now talking about men molesting women, it's been happening since the beginning of time. Since the beginning of man and woman, it's been happening. It's now just got cornered down into such a corner that it's beginning to come out that women are protesting and talking about what had happened to them in the past by men. Well, you put a man and a woman in a servitory, just the two of them, day and night, working together, and there's always that premonition for a man to, or the woman, to physically be attracted to that person they're with. And something may happen physically, and when it does, it breaks that good relationship that they had of just being normal people, friendly, and without an interruption of that friendliness, with their mind on what they were doing. As soon as you break what your mind is supposed to be on doing, then you have an entity entered into the picture that's going to cause great problems in your life. And so we need to watch those things, because we are men. And women, if you're listening to this, you need to watch those things because you are a woman. And we are drawn to each other, as Adam and Eve were joined together. And so we have the same problem. Question and answers about Genesis 1 through 11, which we just crossed over that bridge a few minutes ago. In our vast universe, it is so vast that it would take a beam of light, which travels at 7 million miles per hour over 100,000 years, just to cover the distance and the length of the galaxy called the Milky Way. But our galaxy is only one among billions many billions, in the known universe. To illustrate the size and universe, consider the following 4 examples. Look at these 4 examples. They are, if we had a stack, a paper model of stacks of sheets of paper, just a fraction thick, a piece of paper, sheet of paper, just a fraction thick. And we say the thickness of the sheet of paper represents the distance to the sun from the earth, 93 million miles. We'll say this thickness is 93 million miles. So if we had that, it would represent the distance to the nearest star. We would need 71 feet high stack of paper. 71 feet high stack of paper, this thin, at 93 million miles apiece. Wow. How do you astronomically come up with that figure? There are some smart people on this earth. The people that came up with all of what I'm reading right here came up with it and have written it into fact. They have written it down. I studied it. To cover the diameter of our Milky Way galaxy would require 310-mile high stack of this paper at 93 million miles per sheet. Now these folks have siphoned this out. They definitely are way above the average to do it. To reach the edge of the known universe would demand a pile of paper sheets 31 million miles high. Hey, God made this universe. It did not just evolve, nor this earth did not just evolve, nor mankind did not just evolve. God made it, a supernatural God. Number B, origin of a grain of sand. Listen to this. Here, an origin world represents the sun. An orange and a grain of sand. The size of an orange. Let's take an orange this size. And a grain of sand, 1 speck. And we're going to measure them. The grain of sand is the earth, circling the orange at a distance of 30 feet. So it's a big orange. So 30 feet around this orange. Pluto, the most remote planet in our solar system, is another grain of sand, circling the orange at 10 city blocks away. In other words, the further you move out, the more distance you travel. And so it is. So Alpha Centauri, the nearest star, is 1,300 miles away from the orange. So if it's 1,300 miles away from the orange and it circles the orange, we're going to really, really gain in the illustration. If the sun were hollow, 1,300,000 Earths could fit inside of it. If a star named Andreas, if it were hollow, could hold 64 million of our suns. Wow. In the constellation of Hercules, there is a star which could contain 1 million of Andreas. Wow. The largest known star. Epsilon could easily swallow up several million stars the size of in Hercules, one in Hercules. The ABCD, the relative speed illustration. Our Earth is traveling around on an axis at 1,000 miles per hour on our axis. It moved, number 2, it moves around the sun 67,000 miles per hour. And here we are sitting still. And we're not flying off the earth. God really is God. He really made something. It is carried by the sun across our galaxy at a speed of 64,000 miles per hour. It moves in orbit around our galaxy at 481,000 miles per hour. It travels through space at 1,350,000 miles per hour. Every 24 hours, we cover 57,367,000 miles. That's every day. Each year, we travel 20,936,400,000 miles across empty space. We are a planet floating in empty space that God made, and He made these planets, and He made this earth, and they don't collide. They have their own orbit. God took His finger and made an orbit and said, you follow that orbit. You follow that orbit. And He put them in there, and they don't collide. You or I could not make on strings, we could not make 5 objects and just swing them all any direction and then not tangle with each other if they were close enough to tangle. And so God made all of this, all the above, of course, but a feeble attempt to illustrate the magnitude of space and the universe, which contains as many stars as there are grains of sand on the seashores of all the world. Furthermore, in Psalm 147:4, also Isaiah 40:26, we are told that God has numbered and named every star. What a God we have. He tells the number of the stars and calls them all by name. Psalm 147:4. Lift up your eyes on high and behold, who hath created these things? That is God, the God of heaven and earth. He called them all by name, by the greatness of His might, for that is strong in power, and not one faileth. Not one faileth, 40:26 of Isaiah. But more glorious than all of this statement, that the same omniscient and omnipresent God healeth the broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds. That's each one of us as human beings. He has as much attention, actually more attention, on us than He does all that other physical stuff that we see. Great is our Lord, and power and distributing is infinite. Psalm 147:5. How minute is our universe compared to our God? As big as it is compared to our God, it's minute. Simply stated, unbelievably small, as big as it is. All material in the universe consists of an atom. This is really interesting. And in turn, is made up of 3 building blocks, which is and are proton and neutron, which 2 go to make the center of the atom called the nucleus, and the electron, which circle the nucleus as our Earth does the sun. This is talking about an atom, something you have to look at with a microscope. A worlds of worlds. In the atom is a picture of the whole universe. These 3 things in there are a picture of the whole universe. On the tip ballpoint of a pen, so many atoms that if they were carried by an army marching 4 abreast, an atom to a man, it would take over 20,000 years for a march past. It would take 2.5 trillion protons laid side by side to span a linear inch. There are as many protons in a cubic inch of copper as there are drops of water in the ocean of the world. A grain of sand on the seashore of our earth. In one atom. I've studied this before. This is not something new. This is something that I've studied. I mark my books. This is all marked out. I have studied this. I have actually done papers on it and got ranked on it. And I'm re-looking at it, and I'm telling you, this is some of the most astronomical stuff that a human being could possibly look at. And it's for you and I. And we can study it. Now, I could go on from where I am right now for another hour just on this proton stuff, but I can't do it because of time. So I'll go quickly. The space between electron and the nucleus is 10,000 times as great as the size of the nucleus. For example, if the outer shell of the electrons in an atom were the size of Houston Astrodome, the nucleus would be the size of a ping pong ball in the center of the stadium. Question: if most of the atoms is empty space, why does a tabletop offer so much resistance when you push you down your fingers? Answer: the surface of the table is like the tip of one's finger, consists of a wall of electrons belonging to the outermost layer of atoms. In both objects, both the speed and force attraction of these electrons prohibit your fingers from going through the table. It's like a fast-moving bicycle wheel spoke. You can't stick your fingers into it. If it's moving fast, you can't stick your fingers in there. How much energy exists within our universe? Of protons and neutrons within the nucleus of any atom are together with a density of 1 billion per cubic inch. This is around 40 pounds of energy between each proton. That's why this thing can make a bomb. If you can compress it and hit it hard enough, it would explode like a... have you ever took, when you was a kid, took a cap, one little cap with a little bit of powder in it, and take a hammer and bang, 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 and them little things shoot up and burn you on the face and whatever. But that little bitty cap would blow that hammer up just a little bit. And so that's like that atom. I've got to quit right here on that because of time-wise. If you will get Wilmington's Guide to the Bible, it's a pretty good sized book, and it'll only cost you about $19 on the internet. If you can find a second-hand one, or find one. It'd be worth paying $39 for. It'd be worth paying $100 for. It is absolutely, positively, 100% one of the best information books that ever was written or put out on the market. And this is one of the books we used in Titus Baptist Seminary. It was one of the first books that I got for Titus Baptist Seminary, and I've been in it since I graduated. I've been in it steady. I'm in it every day. I'm in the Bible every day, and I'm in this book. This book is about the Bible, is about the God we serve, and that's what we need. So we're going to close now for now, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.